And let's just see what we can see coming through here. So, come back to one of these first drawings. Here we go. We look at hemoglobin, and I'm just doing things as I hit them, so we may see something else that helps us understand them more. But
Right.
hemoglobin, the structure in red blood cells that carries oxygen to tissue, so it's one of our energy markers. The range is 11.1 to 15.9, so it's 4.8 between there, and you're 1 or 4.8, so you're 20% of the range. You're down here somewhere.
Wow.
So again, we're just comparing to other people, but that's your hemoglobin point. Red blood cells, you got a good number of cells. Size of cells are good, so we have a good number, good size, but the hemoglobin in the cell is pretty low. That usually correlates back mostly with chronic stress impairing our capacity for absorbing the gut, so we're not absorbing iron as well. Usually we would also see that correlating with lowered ferritin. We'll look, as we go forward, we'll look to see if there's a ferritin marker. If ferritin is low, because we draw from that first to make hemoglobin, we also have to have ferritin for transporting thyroid hormone, making neurotransmitters that manage stress, a lot of other issues. So if we see low hemoglobin relatively, usually the other things are beginning to be impaired as well. Fasting glucose at 102, depending on the absolute markers, normal, let's say, is less than 99. Some studies say that statistically every point above 84 represents a 6% increase in the likelihood of developing diabetes within 10 years. That's about 18 times 6%, well over 100.
She already has diabetes, so
You're right.
should be over 100%.
Yeah.
So I didn't say earlier, I said one time that, and I failed to go all the way, I said most people with insulin resistance never have diabetes. Developing diabetes requires two things. Type 2 diabetes requires having insulin resistance and having an immune attack on the cells that make insulin. So those who never have the immune attack never have diabetes.
Okay. But they're still getting the damage
And
from.
getting the damage to other systems, yes.
Right.
We just don't have the blood sugar shifts.
Okay.
But developing type 2 diabetes it means that there has been also an attack on islet cells, the cells in the pancreas that make insulin, a self-attack on those tissues. Now there's some question or some evidence that may be linked to certain viral issues, but genetically it's linked to gluten as well. I'm concerned about autoimmune issues because I don't believe that humans have a series of autoimmune diseases. I think we develop an autoimmune process that puts tissues at risk, and it puts multiple tissues at risk, and whatever your weakest system is where you'll see that flare first. It starts in the gut, I believe, with an immune attack on an undigested food protein. And the more chronic stress we have, the more we inhibit gastric secretion, because if I'm running from the bear, it doesn't matter if I digest that last mastodon meal, I'm shutting down digestion in crisis, but I'm also slowing it down when I'm just kicking chihuahuas.
Right.
So we make less stomach acid with stress, not more. And the only things that break proteins into the component amino acids are stomach acid and pancreatic enzyme, and the trigger for pancreatic enzyme is stomach acid. So anytime we slow that process, we don't break proteins down as well. We're far more likely to begin to develop immune issues. This is a book that went out of print back in the early 90s. And so that was a list that was known in the early 90s, that everything on that list has exactly the same genetic link to gluten that celiac disease does. But celiac is the only one that the medical model talks about gluten with. So I just think we develop an immune process, and multiple tissues are at risk. So I think we have to control for the process, not just for the markers of a disease.
Wow.
Someone has diabetes, we don't want to have Hashimoto's, don't want to have lupus, don't want to have Sjogren's, or on and on. All types of other tissues could be at risk with the same process.
And then fibromyalgia wasn't known well in the 90s, but it's probably on this list as well.
Yeah, and fibro again.
Because fiber's a lot like Graves' disease. And
Yeah, well, I think it's just I think it's an effect of low thyroid. I think it's a cluster of symptoms that show up with someone's low thyroid, but the thyroid blood work's okay, so they're not being called low thyroid.
right.
Okay. Okay, so further on in here, so your serum calcium is elevated, which usually means that you are stealing calcium from bone, that your body will be systemically acidic. and we correct body's blood pH by using urine as a buffer fluid, and we draw calcium from our only store in bone and pee out calcium in order to correct that pH and keep our immune system surviving. Usually elevated calcium means we're pulling out of bone. You have some elevations in 3 different liver enzymes,
Wow.
some relatively significantly, and these are almost always markers of burden from prescription medication.
That's not a surprise.
That's not a surprise, yeah. I'm off all but 2.
Okay. Now, one thing that helps in correcting these over time, just to throw this out at this point, is the extract from milk thistle, silymarin.
Can you say that again?
Silymarin, Silymarin.
S-I-L.
Y-M-A-R-I-N.
We use a pure encapsulation silymarin, and when we see elevations of multiple enzymes at this range, I would probably do 1 in the morning and 2 at bedtime. I take it routinely as a preventive myself, but
Is, what is the, out of my, I'm currently on 2 metformins, 1,000 milligrams of metformin and 60 milligrams of Cymbalta and 10 milligrams of Percocet or Norco PRN. Which of those is the
That's the biggest
is the
load on
the culprit, no way to know for sure.
okay.
All are burdens.
All of
Every
those are
medication is being treated by the liver as a toxin, so
Okay.
I'm trying to break it down because every medication works by blocking or inducing some kind of enzyme that affects other things. So the body says, this is an invader, it's messing me up, let's get rid of it. So
Okay. So especially Tylenol goes into the
Tylenol, right. So
liver.
Percocet, anything like
That's
that.
got
with
Tylenol in it.
Tylenol is the, I would argue might be number 1. It's usually called the number 2 agent damaging liver in our country after alcohol. I'm not sure if alcohol wins or Tylenol wins, but
wow.
okay.
Okay.
Then your lipid panel. Elevation in total cholesterol is known since the 1930s as a symptom of low thyroid.
What's that?
Elevation of cholesterol
Really?
is a symptom of low thyroid. Okay. And depression as a disease is a symptom of low thyroid. There are 2 diseases, classed as diseases today, that didn't exist when thyroid issues were treated functionally. They treated what you were experiencing instead of what your levels were. Today, the definition of low thyroid is how much thyroid hormone did you make compared to other people? Was your number fall in that range? In the past, it was how well is your body using thyroid hormone, which is what makes more sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So elevated lipid is, in first place, is just a marker then of impaired metabolic efficiency. Cholesterol, I have seen no evidence anywhere that it was a cause of cardiac risk. It is involved, oxidized lipid is involved in producing plaque, but not a cause of plaque. Plaque is about 80% or 90% excess calcium being deposited at points of inflammation, and the oxidized lipid helps to stick it together so it'll stay there like a scab, so we won't blow out that vessel. Triglyceride elevation, the only thing that makes triglycerides is insulin converting excess glucose. HDL, typically anytime triglycerides are elevated, HDL is going to be lower, same mechanism involved in making them both. And then the LDLs will be elevated. And so their flag is higher LDLs or higher ratios or risk markers. They correlate with the risk. They're not cause for risk. No evidence anywhere that I can ever find, I've never seen, that shows causal relationship, but correlation. Even the most extensive lab, the most expensive new labs that are breaking down the particle size will say it's associated with cardiac risk.
What's the benefit? I guess none of taking a statin.
None that I can see.
Right.
Causing damage to the system.
Because it'll lower those numbers, but it doesn't fix the problem.
It does not address risk. It's a belief system. If you are interested in going into that, there's several places to look, and I'm just giving you my
I
perspective.
appreciate that, yeah.
One book that's been interesting is called Nourishing Fats. It's by Sally Fallon.
Nourishing Traditions or Nourishing...
Different book,
Tradition,
same author.
different book. But Nourishing Fats, she goes into the long history of the studies and semi-studies and falsified studies and such that were used to create the perception that saturated fats were evil, that we needed to go to vegetable oils. But this whole thing about it was all an economically driven process in order to build industry, first the food industry and later the pharmaceutical industry. One of the studies that much of this about cholesterol was based on was a guy named Ansel Keys, a PhD, not a physician, who was one of the people publishing the theory that cholesterol caused cardiac disease, and the medical model laughed at that, apparently hurt his feelings. Set up a study. Don't think it would be allowed today. He did not use volunteers. He used patients in mental institutions because they could control what they were fed. He said that one group, he said that both groups got 30% of their calories from fats, that one group got only butter, so they only got saturated fat, the other group got only vegetable oils, and then after 1 year, the vegetable oil group cholesterol dropped 14%, so we had to get rid of these evil saturated fats. We were killing people. We had to get control of this menace. And he was persuasive. It was a heavily funded study, very highly promoted. He got on the cover of Time magazine, a lot of stuff. And so the model that had laughed at him, it became swayed, eventually became the gospel. So recent years, researchers from today went back to the original data from that study, thinking they could tease out, with current statistical methods, tease out more information. When they started looking at the data, they realized they didn't need to. First of all, he lied. He said one group got butter, so they only got